Hey, what's up everybody? Prime22 here, bringing you another episode of the Transformers Lore Podcast. And for those of you who don't know, the Transformers Lore Podcast seeks to cover information and stuff that doesn't have any visual medium to it, so they wouldn't really make good videos proper. So I do it in this podcast format. And if you've been watching my videos this week, you know that I've been sick, you know that I haven't had much time to work on videos last week. So in turn, I didn't really get a chance to read what I was supposed to cover here today, which was, I think it was Trigger Warnings, the next part of Beast Wars Uprising. So I shuffled things around. There was a Beast Wars Uprising story covered on Transformers Lore, the proper series, and that was a change to the agenda. However, since I was sick, I couldn't read the 40-page freaking story that was the next Beast Wars Uprising story for the podcast. So I'm going to be covering a different thing, and that's something that I've got asked in the comments a lot, but that's, how does Zoids fit into the Transformers multiverse? And there seems to be a misconception that it exists in the Transformers universe. No, it exists in the multiverse, and the Zoids themselves can be assumed to be analogous to Transformers. They are the Transformers of their universe, but yeah. So in doing this little podcast episode, I expect you to know what the different clusters are in the multiverse. I'm not going to go over them again. I've covered them like around 3 different times throughout this channel's history. But yeah. So, most importantly, you should know what the Simon cluster is by now. So the first hint that Zoids was somehow part of the multiverse came in the form of an Easter egg in the guidebook called Transformers Animated, The Allspark Almanac 2. And this is going to be interesting because I'm going to give a little out-of-universe context. I rarely give out-of-universe context because that usually muddies up things and leaves people with different impressions of what's actually in the canon. But it started with an Easter egg in Transformers Animated The Allspark Almanac 2, which is a huge guidebook for Transformers Animated in really Malgus 1207.26 Alpha, the main animated continuity. And that book is filled to the brim with Easter eggs. The story of the Allspark Almanac is that the writers, Bill Forrester and I believe Jim Sorensen, they cross over from Nexus negative 3760.925 Theta, and they go into the Malgus cluster to conduct interviews to, collect information for their guidebook. Quadwall negative 3760.925 Theta is our universe. There seems to be the misconception that it's a negative polarity universe because there's that negative sign there, but that 3760 actually signifies that it's a before Common Era date and not a Common Era date. So it bases itself off of the Hebrew calendar, I believe. So yeah, but they cross over, and the way they manage to talk to the Cybertronians is they disguise themselves as Cybertronians that exist in Malgus 1207.26 Alpha, and Bill Forrester uses the disguise of a character called Megadeth. So Megadeth is a character that, in the same stroke as he's established to exist in that universe, Bill Forrester assumes his identity to, interview the universe. Now, Megadeth's vehicle mode is established to be an Elephant, wherever the intonation is, wherever the emphasis on the syllable is. But that is a model of Zoid. Now, this could just be, if they left it off here, then it'd just be an Easter egg. There's, look, there's a Transformer that turns into this. That's from another franchise. But that doesn't mean that franchise takes place in that universe or multiverse even. However, Ask Vector Prime came in, as it tends to do. And Ask Vector Prime, if you don't know, was a Hasbro officially run Q&A Facebook page that basically answered questions. It established a lot of the canon for the Transformers multiverse. If you haven't read any of Ask Vector Prime yet, I highly recommend you do so. Once you read through Ask Vector Prime, you've unlocked the secrets of the multiverse. You pretty much understand everything, because you have to have a big base a good foundation of knowledge before you go into reading it, because Ask Vector Prime expects you to know a lot. But Ask Vector Prime is really the glue that holds together canon. So one person asked Ask Vector Prime about the relationships between Zoids and the multiverse, since there was a dude who transformed into a Zoid. And on June 15th, 2015, the Easter egg was effectively promoted to actually mean something when Vector Prime made it canon that Malgus 1207.26 Alpha had once overlapped with some body types from Simon 999.04 Alpha. Now we know what the Simon cluster is. It's in the multiverse. It's sort of on the transitionary phase of the multiverse. And Malgus 1207.26 Alpha seems to have a tendency to overlap with some universes for a brief time. I wouldn't be surprised if the whole cluster is sort of like drifting, because it also overlapped a bit with some Omniverse universes. Specifically, whatever it was Ben 10 was in. Ben 10 is not in the multiverse. It's in the Omniverse, but it had some brief contact with Malgus to some extent. But anyway, Vector Prime gave us the notation of Simon 999.04 Alpha, and that, if you guys know how notation works, I've done a video on that. You unravel that notation, you find that's the date for the first episode of the first Zoids anime. And that puts Zoids Chaotic Century and its sequel, Zoids New Century. And I know Chaotic Century is divided into two different series, sort of. But that whole first anime continuity takes place in the multiverse as Simon 999.04 Alpha. And that's how Zoids fits into the multiverse. That's why we'll end up covering Zoids at some point on this show. Not necessarily the podcast, but, Transformers lore. So that's going to wrap up this episode. It's going to be fairly short because I didn't have much time to work on this because I've been sick. But hopefully, I'm not sure if I don't think we're going to pick up Beast Wars Uprising next time, are we? I think that's the end of the month, isn't it? We'll get back to Beast Wars Uprising when we get back to it. But I have other stuff planned up for, our usual breaks in between Beast Wars Uprising stories. So thank you guys so much for listening. Check out social media links that are in the description. Subscribe if you have not yet. And have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.